The priest tries to exorcise the demon from the boy's body. Unexpectedly, the boy possessed by the demon actually plays a dirty trick. The demon then grabs another exorcist by the neck and greedily sucks his soul. The exorcist struggles desperately, but the demon-possessed boy bites his palm. But just at this moment, the demon inside the boy seems to suffer some kind of severe injury. The demon in the boy is finally expelled, but the crisis isn't completely resolved. The demons are plotting an even bigger conspiracy. A few days earlier, the boy was suddenly possessed by a demon, becoming violent and bizarre. Ordinary food seemed tasteless to him, while cockroaches on the wall turned into a delicious delicacy instead. His eyes revealed a crazy hunger, and saliva dripped from his mouth involuntarily. He suddenly rushed over, caught a cockroach, and swallowed it whole. However, one cockroach was far from enough to fill his stomach. Just then, a burst of noise came from downstairs. It was the boy's mother and sister. When he saw the two of them, the boy seemed to spot something even more delicious than cockroaches, but the last trace of his sanity warned him not to do that. So he walked to the cabinet, took out a bag of his favorite potato chips, and ate them to ease his hunger. Yet no matter how carefully he savored the chips, they tasted like chewing wax. Until a moment when the boy accidentally bit his own finger. The smell of blood made the last trace of his sanity collapse completely. When his mother and sister found him, the gory scene made them scream in terror. They realized the boy was possessed by a demon. The mother hurried to the church to find Father Anderson, begging him to perform an exorcism on the boy. After listening to the woman's story, Anderson was certain that the boy was indeed possessed by a demon, and agreed to the exorcism request. The two rushed to the boy's side at once. Such an incident in the town quickly spread among the people. It didn't take long for the news to reach a man named Kyle. When he was a child, Kyle had witnessed his mother being possessed by a demon, and he had successfully driven the demon away without any external help. So when he heard the rumor about the demon, Kyle became interested. He took the initiative to go to the boy's house, planning to help with the exorcism. Father Anderson takes out his exorcism equipment and begins to attempt exorcising the boy. He holds a metal cross in one hand, and holy water in the other, constantly chanting exorcism prayers. However, this demon is far more powerful than imagined. It doesn't show the slightest fear. Anderson splashes the holy water in his hand onto the boy's body. The next second, the boy lets out a painful howl as if being burned. Anderson splashes holy water on the boy once more. This time, the demon's reaction is even stronger than before. It even floats in midair. Just as Anderson is about to press his advantage and continue the attack, the boy kicks him away. The mother hurries over to check on her son, but the one occupying the boy's body is still that demon. As a result, the mother is knocked flying by the boy on the spot. Anderson is worried that the boy will hurt more people, so he ignores his own injuries and forces himself to pounce on the boy to restrain him. However, this alone is far from enough to eliminate the demon. Just when the two are at a loss, Kyle arrives just in time. Father Anderson has also heard a little about Kyle. Learning that Kyle has come to help with the exorcism, he takes the initiative to lead Kyle to the boy. Whether it's due to Kyle's deterrence or not, the demon becomes extremely calm at this moment. It even takes the initiative to greet Kyle. The demon claims to have known Kyle many years ago and is aware of his deeds. At first, Kyle thinks it's just a random lie made up by a boy possessed by a demon, but the next second, the boy actually starts to take the initiative to talk about various past events of Kyle, many of which even Kyle's own sister doesn't know. From this, Kyle confirms that the child is indeed possessed by a demon. However, because those things are too embarrassing, Kyle doesn't admit them. Instead, he pretends to be angry and scolds the boy for making up nonsense.
So long have we tried to find you, outcast. Too long have you hidden your light.
Before Kyle and the others can figure out what the boy means. By his words, the boy possessed by the demon pounces on Kyle. Caught off guard, Kyle is knocked to the ground. Immediately after, the boy straddles him and forces his mouth open. Then, waves of soul are sucked out of Kyle's body by the boy. When Kyle's mother was possessed by a demon back then, she also used this exact method to suck souls. As Kyle falls into the memory, Father Anderson reacts quickly. He grabs the demon in the boy's body that is straddling Kyle and forces the two apart. Seeing that its plan is ruined, the demon flies into a rage on the spot. Meanwhile, Kyle, who has come to his senses, flees in a hurry with the priest. That night, Kyle goes to the nursing home to see his mother lying on the hospital bed. Perhaps there was something wrong with Kyle's exorcism method back then. Since then, his mother has been in a vegetative state. Looking at his mother, Kyle once again recalls the scene where she was possessed by the demon. When his mother was sucking his soul, a tear rolled down Kyle's cheek. The next second, his mother seemed to see something extremely terrifying. She let go of Kyle voluntarily, threw him into a separate room, and then flew into a fury outside the door. Thinking of this, Kyle vaguely figures out a way to deal with the demon. The next day, he goes to the boy's house again with Father Anderson. As soon as the boy sees them, his eyes are filled with murderous intent. Father Anderson originally intends to start the exorcism ritual again, but Kyle walks slowly toward the window instead. He knows that demons dislike sunlight, so he decides to use this method to deal with the demon in the boy's body. Kyle yanks off the curtains in one go. Blinding sunlight instantly shines on the boy. The next second, the boy screams, tumbles off the bed, and tries to escape from the sunlight, but Kyle and the priest grab the boy and drag him into the sunlight to expose him to it. Naturally, the demon will not just sit and wait for its end. The boy suddenly erupts with enormous strength and kicks both Kyle and the priest away. Before they can get back on their feet, the demon-possessed boy charges toward Kyle at high speed. The boy grabs Kyle by the neck and starts sucking his soul just like before, feeling his life force fading rapidly from his body. Kyle musters all his strength and forcefully turns his head, interrupting the process. Then, before the demon can react, he punches the boy to the ground with one fist. Only then does he successfully break free from the demon's grasp. However, the demon's power far exceeds Kyle's imagination. The next second, the boy's eyes suddenly roll back, and then his body gradually begins to float into the air. Kyle is stunned by the scene in front of him, confused about what the demon is trying to do. Just as the two are tangled up, Father Anderson, worried that Kyle will hurt the child, hurries to stop Kyle, but Kyle is unwilling to listen to the advice. He even hits the priest away with a backhand. Thanks to Anderson's interference, the demon gains a momentary reprieve, and seizes the chance to launch another counterattack immediately. The boy bites down on Kyle's hand, but the next second, he lets go on his own and seems to be in great pain. Kyle realizes, besides his tears, his blood also makes the demon fear. Kyle quickly holds the boy down and lets his blood drip into the boy's mouth. This method really works. The boy seems to be suffering from an extremely terrible punishment, struggling desperately to break free. How could Kyle let him get away? After an unknown amount of time, the boy suddenly says a confusing,
"Cannot be stopped."
nonsensical sentence. A pool of thick black liquid sprays out of the boy's mouth. Obviously, that is the demon's true form. Moments later, the black liquid collapses at once. Only then does Kyle check the boy again and find that he has returned to normal. However, the confusing sentence the demon said before leaving lingers in Kyle's mind. Clearly, the real trouble has only just begun. Before long, a man carrying a dripping bag goes to the police station to report a case. He claims that someone is cruelly killing protected animals at will in the forest, and nailing their bodies to trees. Upon hearing this, Detective John takes his men to the woods to investigate, but when they arrive, the culprit is already long gone. All they see are dozens of animals cruelly nailed to trees, and all of these animals have had their internal organs hollowed out by the culprit. Even John, an experienced detective, is still shocked, frozen on the spot after seeing this scene. In order to catch the culprit, John and his men search the forest continuously, trying to find clues left by the culprit. Before long, they find a trailer in an open area. John suspects it was left by the culprit, so he and his men summon up their courage and go inside to check. Yet after seeing the situation inside, John is shocked once again. Although the trailer is empty, the entire wall is covered with scratch marks from nails, and all of them are coated with blood. John recognizes that these scratches were all left by human fingernails. Clearly, a major incident that is completely beyond his imagination has occurred here. Father Anderson is on a date with his girlfriend when he receives a call from the nursing home. After hanging up the phone, Anderson hurries to Kyle's residence with an anxious look on his face, because the call said Kyle had stolen his own mother from the nursing home, and even claimed he would perform an exorcism ritual. The priest wants to tell Kyle that his mother's dementia isn't caused by a demon. After all, Anderson has performed many exorcism rituals before, and there has never been a case where the possessed person developed dementia after the ritual. But Kyle refuses to believe this. Because his mother became like this precisely after being possessed by a demon back then, Kyle is convinced that the demon has not left yet. He hopes Anderson can help him perform an exorcism ritual. Seeing how stubborn Kyle is, Anderson finds it impossible to persuade him, so he agrees to the request. Just to make Kyle give up completely, Anderson lights the sacred herbs and takes out a metal cross from his exorcism bag. While whispering incantations softly, Anderson splashes holy water onto Kyle's mother. As he expected, Kyle's mother shows no reaction at all. Anderson then pulls open the curtains. Ordinary demons are extremely afraid of sunlight. Under such intense sun exposure, they would show abnormal reactions, yet Kyle's mother still remains completely unresponsive. It is obvious that she isn't possessed by a demon. Just as Anderson thinks Kyle will stop here, Kyle suddenly unwraps the bandage on the wound where he was bitten by the boy earlier, squeezes out some blood, and drips it into his mother's mouth. Kyle believes his blood can harm the demon. This time, Kyle's mother finally reacts, but it is not because the demon inside her is driven away. Instead, it is because Kyle's blood chokes her. After this incident, Kyle finally gives up. He understands that there is indeed no demon in his mother's body. The glimmer of hope he had barely mustered in his heart is extinguished now. Kyle squats down in disappointment, hugging his head and bursting into tears. Later, he has to send his mother back to the nursing home. However, what Kyle doesn't know is that shortly after he leaves, an elderly man in a neat suit suddenly comes to his mother's hospital bed and says some nonsensical words.
You had so much fire in you. Sad, too, that your son will never know how, despite it all, we have him anyway.
The man turns around and leaves immediately after saying this. After he leaves, a tear quietly slides down the corner of Kyle's mother's eye. It is clear that she isn't as demented as she appears. Kyle's mother recalls a few fragments of the past, back when Kyle used his own method to drive the demon out of her body. The demon didn't dissipate, instead, it lingered in place. It then launched an attack on Kyle. The mucus wrapped around Kyle's neck and lifted him into the air. However, Kyle's mother had become extremely weak due to the demon's possession earlier. She could only watch helplessly as her son was about to be killed by the demon, but just at this moment, for some unknown reason, the demon suddenly let go of its tentacles. Kyle fell to the ground, and immediately after, the demon disappeared from the room. It is obvious that the incident back then was not as simple as Kyle remembered. At the same time, a new incident occurs in the town again. A man named Luke returns home and finds his wife brutally murdered in the house. The police dispatch immediately and catch the culprit soon after. To everyone's surprise, the culprit turns out to be Blake, Luke's best friend. However, his state is very abnormal. He seems to be possessed by a demon. Therefore, the police invite Father Anderson to perform an exorcism ritual on Blake. Later, Kyle and Father Anderson go to the place where Blake is detained. Because his situation is very special, he is detained alone by the police in the prison basement. Looking at Anderson and Luke, Blake shows no sign of nervousness at all. He even tells Luke to his face how enjoyable he felt when he killed Luke's wife. Luke firmly believes that his friend has been possessed by a demon, and demands that Anderson and the others perform an exorcism on Blake. After seeing Luke off, Father Anderson tries to communicate with the demon, but is mocked by the demon in return. What makes Anderson most unbearable is that the demon even mocks him, a priest, in the name of God. Anderson flies into a rage instantly. He stops talking to the demon, takes out a metal cross instead, and chants the exorcism spell at Blake. At first, Blake acts violently, but only a moment later, he suddenly bursts into laughter, mocking Anderson for falling into a trap. Then he plays with the items in the exorcism bag casually. Seeing this scene, Anderson realizes that he is unable to deal with this creature, so he stops lingering any longer, takes Kyle with him, and turns to leave. Seeing that the priest is about to leave, Kyle steps forward to stop him, confused about why Anderson suddenly gives up. Only then does he learn the truth. Although there is indeed a demon in Blake's body, it is not an external parasitic demon. Instead, it is a demon born from the corruption of his own soul. The priest has no way to drive away this kind of demon. Kyle decides to use his own method to deal with the demon in Blake's body. He walks up to Blake and presses his injured hand on top of Blake's head. In an instant, Blake seems to suffer immense pain. He keeps wailing and struggling. When Kyle lets go, even though Blake has never met Kyle before, he utters a name in terror.
You.
Kyle is curious about what this name means, but Blake doesn't reveal anything. He only claims that under the influence of this power, everyone will leave Kyle, but Kyle refuses to believe it. He beats Blake up on the spot, then turns around and leaves. Without Kyle's help, the priest is completely helpless. Instead, Blake seizes the opportunity to counterattack and grabs Anderson by the neck. Anderson struggles desperately. Kyle hears the commotion inside and quickly returns to help. The two work together to pin Blake down on the table, but Blake is still unwilling to give in without a fight. He even grabs the holy water bottle on the table and smashes it against Kyle's head, instantly leaving Kyle's head bleeding. Kyle is completely enraged by Blake's actions. He disregards his own wounds entirely, pounces on Blake, and beats him violently on the ground. Blood flows into Blake's mouth as a result. Under the influence of the blood, the demon is slightly driven away. Blake spits out a mouthful of black mucus. However, most of the demon still remains parasitic in his body. Up to this point, even Kyle has no way to drive the demon out of Blake's body. Not long after, Blake is permanently detained in a mental asylum to prevent him from going out and endangering society. After Anderson and Kyle leave, Luke goes to see Blake, who is tied to the bed. Looking at this friend who killed his wife, his heart is filled with mixed emotions. When Blake sees Luke, he mocks him again. This provokes Luke. Luke covers Blake's mouth and nose, trying to suffocate him to death. But at the last moment, Luke still lets go of his hand. It would be too easy for Blake to die like this. Only keeping Blake here forever until the end of his life is the best punishment for him. Immediately after, Luke turns around and leaves. Back home, Kyle originally wanted to go out for a walk at night to clear his mind. Blake's words from the day had left his heart feeling heavy. During this time, Kyle notices that the lights in his neighbor's house are still on. He is suddenly a little curious, so he walks over cautiously to check. Kyle taps gently on the door a few times, but there is no response from inside. It's as if no one lives there at all. This makes Kyle even more confused. He plucks up the courage to go inside, only to find that his neighbor has been brutally murdered at home, and just outside the house. The elderly man in a suit is watching all this. It is obvious that he is definitely involved in what happened here. However, after investigating, the police conclude that Kyle's neighbor committed suicide, and quickly close the case, but Kyle refuses to believe that his neighbor would choose to end his life in such a way. He is certain that it must have been the work of a demon, so he finds Father Anderson, wanting to work with him to drive away the demons hiding in the town. Anderson then takes Kyle to the front of a certain house. According to Anderson, the owner of this house is an elderly lady named Anna, who had also been possessed by a demon before. With Anderson's help, she was successfully freed. As soon as the two step into the door, Anna's daughter pulls the priest aside, saying that the elderly lady Anna has been very abnormal in recent days. Her temper is much more irritable than before. She scolds and hits the people around her at the slightest dissatisfaction. Even her young granddaughter, whom she used to dote on the most, is now constantly cursed by Anna. The woman believes her mother has been possessed by a demon again, and begs Father Anderson to save her. Just then, Anna also hears the sound of the priest's arrival. She walks slowly to the priest with the help of a cane. Kyle hurries forward to help her, but the moment their hands touch, Anna seems to suffer immense pain. She wails and falls to the ground. Kyle's face turns pale. He seems to have figured out something. Later, he takes the chance to tell his guest to Father Anderson. Kyle believes that the reaction Anna had must be because she was hurt by his ability. That means there is indeed a demon in Anna's body. If that's the case, Kyle can use this method to find all the demons hiding in the town. However, Anderson is a little confused by this. After all, he had spent a whole week performing exorcism on Anna back then to help her recover. He can't believe that she is still possessed by a demon, but Anderson also knows Kyle's ability very well. To confirm whether Anna is really possessed, he goes to the elderly woman and asks her several details about Anna's past life. As expected, the woman gets all the answers wrong. At this moment, although Anderson is unwilling to believe it, he has to admit that the elderly woman is indeed possessed by a demon. That night, Anderson finds Kyle and admits that Anna is indeed possessed by a demon again. He takes Kyle to perform the exorcism, but they are stopped by Anna's daughter. It seems Anna had already anticipated that the priest would come to the door again with Kyle, so she had arranged for her daughter to block the two at the door in advance. They have to give up. The next day, Father Anderson and Kyle go to visit another person, someone who was once possessed by a demon and later freed by Anderson's exorcism. The moment Kyle sees the man, he places his hands on the man's shoulders. Sure enough, the man seems to suffer immense pain. When Kyle lets go, the man angrily takes out a shotgun, ready to kill them. Kyle and Anderson don't have time to explain and can only flee in a hurry. After this incident, Anderson's heart is filled with fear, because based on the current situation, none of the people he had exorcised before were actually freed successfully. The demons are still parasitic in their bodies. It's just that the demons are very cunning and have learned to hide. That's why Anderson thought the exorcisms had succeeded. If that's the case, they must have done a lot of evil deeds during this time. With a heavy heart, Anderson goes to an abandoned factory, and finds the third person he had successfully exorcised. This is a young girl named Shirley. On the surface, the priest pretends to be taking the girl Shirley home. In reality, he is creating an opportunity for Kyle to get close to her, to verify if there is still a demon in Shirley's body. The moment Kyle's hand touches the girl, Shirley seems to suffer immense pain and pushes Kyle away quickly. It is obvious that there is also a demon in Shirley's body. Watching the scene in front of him, the priest's heart grows heavier. The two try to perform an exorcism on her, but Shirley remains completely unflustered. Although she seems to be at a disadvantage in the 1 versus 2 situation, Shirley tells Kyle that, in fact, many demons have come to the town during this time, and all of them already know Kyle's identity. Before long, Kyle will become a delicious meal for the demons. As soon as she finishes speaking, Shirley takes the initiative to attack, tackling Kyle to the ground. Just like the boy before, she starts to absorb his soul. The priest hurries to pull Shirley off Kyle. This action enrages the demon inside Shirley, which shifts its target to Anderson. The elderly and frail priest is no match for the demon. Fortunately, Kyle acts in time. He runs to Shirley and grabs her face tightly with both hands. Not long after, Shirley's body slowly floats up into the air. A massive black mucus sprays out of Shirley's mouth. This thick black liquid seems to have a life of its own. It wraps around Kyle and suspends him in midair. Kyle struggles constantly and finally manages to break free from the demon's restraints. After that, the black mucus scatters completely, and Kyle falls to the ground. Father Anderson hurries to Shirley's side to check on her condition. He feels slightly relieved only after confirming that Shirley still has a pulse. The two rush to send Shirley to the hospital. However, after Shirley passes the critical stage, Anderson and Kyle discover that Shirley has become a demented vegetative state, just like Kyle's mother. The successive incidents cause the priest's faith to begin to waver. He has always firmly believed that God's boundless wisdom can save more lives, But everything that has happened now is just as Blake said before. They have been abandoned by God. Anderson feels a deep sense of despair. Since then, Anderson has returned to the church and locked himself inside all day long. He keeps replaying the videos of his past exorcisms, unable to accept that after more than 20 years of devout faith, he finally finds out that everything was a lie. It was just a performance staged by demons for him. Anderson can't accept this fact. After a long period of contemplation, he decides to prove with his own actions that God has not abandoned him, and that his exorcism rituals are indeed effective. So, Anderson finds another person who seems to be possessed by a demon, ready to perform an exorcism on them. At the same time, Kyle is woken up by urgent knocks on the door, but when he opens the door, he finds no one outside. On the ground outside the door, there is a ceramic doll of unknown origin. Kyle is filled with confusion. He is just about to go over and pick up the ceramic doll to check it. When Kyle wakes up again, he is met with an ugly old face. It turns out to be Anna, possessed by the demon. Kyle never expected that she would dare to come to his door on her own, while he is secretly planning how to use his own blood to drive the demon out of the elderly Anna's body. Anna actually makes the first move, quickly rushing up to Kyle, then starts to absorb his soul. Father Anderson is not by his side at this moment, so Kyle is most likely going to die. However, at this critical moment, a mysterious force forcibly pulls Anna away. Kyle falls into a coma once again. If he were awake, he would recognize this person as Sidney, his new next-door neighbor. Of course, this man is also the mysterious man in the suit who appeared at the nursing home earlier. From his conversation with Anna, it turns out that Sidney is also a demon, and his rank is higher than Anna's. It was Sidney who killed Kyle's neighbor earlier and then took over the neighbor's house. His goal is to get close to Kyle quietly and take the chance to absorb his soul. He never expected that Anna would show up to cut in and steal his target. Sidney sternly warns Anna not to randomly interfere and snatch his prey again, otherwise, he will make her suffer the consequences. After hearing Sidney's threat, Anna is unwilling but has to agree. However, it is obvious that Anna is not willing to give up Kyle, this delicious meal, just like that. So she changes the subject and starts instigating Sidney to get rid of Father Anderson, claiming that only by doing so can Sidney approach Kyle normally. Whether Sidney sees through Anna's intention or not, he says he will handle everything and doesn't need Anna to worry about it. On the other side, when Kyle wakes up again, he finds himself in the church unexpectedly. He looks for Anderson immediately, and tells him about the attack by Anna the previous night. Just then, Kyle notices a wooden door in the church, and a strange noise suddenly comes from behind it. Kyle wants to go over to check, but Father Anderson stops him desperately, as if there is some important secret hidden inside. But the next second, the wooden door is forced open, and a burly man walks out from behind it. Anderson immediately shouts for Kyle to help stop the burly man. They must not let the man leave, for he has been possessed by a demon. Upon hearing this, Kyle hurries to stop the man, but he is no match for the burly man and is knocked flying in an instant. Just as the demon is about to leave the church, a ray of sunlight happens to pass through the church window and shine on the burly man. The next second, he seems to be frozen in place, standing straight and motionless. Anderson seizes the opportunity, rushes forward, and tries to subdue the burly man to lock him in the church again. But the man suddenly reacts, grabs Anderson, and smashes him into a nearby table. Immediately after, the burly man turns around, grabs Kyle, and starts to absorb his soul. Kyle struggles desperately, wrapping his body around the man, trying to use his own exorcism ability to drive the demon out of the burly man's body. This method really works. The burly man lets out a shrill scream, then, a large amount of black mucus sprays out of his mouth, and then disperses and disappears completely. Without the demon in his body, the burly man returns to normal. After this incident, the two realize that neither of them can deal with the demons alone. They decide to join forces again to resist the hidden demons together. Unexpectedly, the priest is attacked in the church. That very night, a boy passing by sees through the church window a man pinning the priest against the wall, carving a mysterious symbol on Anderson's body with a knife. If Kyle were here, he would recognize the man as Sidney. After finishing all this, Sidney walks out of the room leisurely. The next day, a memorial event is held in the town to mourn the workers who lost their lives in a mining accident many years ago. Sheriff John specifically finds Kyle, hoping he can help confirm whether his good friend Lenny is possessed by a demon, because recently, John has always felt that Lenny's behavior is strange. So Kyle walks up to Lenny and pretends to touch him casually. When their palms touch, Lenny shows no abnormal reaction at all. Kyle then signals to the sheriff. Lenny is not possessed by a demon. Later, Lenny's wife Mary distributes candles to everyone in the square, but the moment Kyle touches her, Mary seems to suffer immense pain and hurries to avoid Kyle. This action attracts Kyle's attention. It is obvious that Mary has been possessed by a demon. The panicked Mary wants to turn around and flee. Kyle quickly pushes through the crowd, constantly searching for Mary's trace. Just then, the unveiling ceremony of the memorial event officially begins. people pull off the cloth covering the bronze statue and let out exclamations, because a red star of Satan is clearly visible on the statue's chest. The crowd immediately breaks into murmurs and discussions. It is at this moment that Father Anderson arrives at the ceremony site. He shouts at everyone at the top of his lungs, claiming that demons are among them. His gaze passes through the noisy crowd and locks onto Sidney. Anderson accuses Sidney of being that demon. Then Anderson takes off his coat, revealing the wound on his chest. It is also a star of Satan, however, in the face of Anderson's accusation. Sidney shows no sign of panic at all. As expected, the townspeople don't believe Anderson at all. Instead, they claim that he has gone crazy. Seeing this scene, Anderson is instantly consumed by anger. He even intends to fight Sidney one-on-one in front of everyone. Fortunately, Kyle arrives at Anderson's side in time. Before Anderson completely loses control, he forcefully pulls him out of the crowd. But Anderson is clearly completely blinded by anger. He wants to kill Sidney and the others all at once. By chance, Anderson learns that Mary is also possessed by a demon, so he takes the opportunity to kidnap Mary and bring her to Kyle's residence. But unfortunately, Kyle isn't at home at this time. He has gone to the prison. Because of Anderson's accusation, Sidney is also detained in prison. Kyle questions him about why he keeps appearing by his side. Only then does he learn that, due to his special physique, he is like a match in the dark in the eyes of demons. That is why demons have all chosen to possess people around Kyle. Moreover, Sidney reveals that their possession is not harmful, although it may cause various negative effects at the beginning, such as increased irritability and anger. The host will return to normal soon after. By then, they will coexist harmoniously with the host. Sidney even says that if Kyle hadn't forcibly interrupted the symbiosis between the demon and his mother back then, his mother wouldn't be lying in the nursing home now, a demented vegetable who can only drool. Kyle is deeply provoked by Sidney's words. When Mary learns that this place is actually Kyle's residence, she immediately tries to escape, but Anderson catches her again and stops her. While the two are tangled up, Charlie, who is not far away, witnesses everything. Later, Charlie hurries to the police station and reports to Sheriff John that Father Anderson has kidnapped Mary. He even lies, claiming that he had seen Anderson carve a demon's heart on his own body earlier. The reason Charlie falsely accuses the priest stems from a scandal known to everyone in the town. Charlie's mother is the priest's lover. For this reason, he has always held a grudge, and been looking for an opportunity to take revenge on Anderson. Under Charlie's false accusation, Sheriff John dispatches his men immediately. First, he finds his good friend Lenny and tells him that Mary has been abducted by the priest. Upon hearing this, Lenny can't help but panic, because he knows that his wife has been possessed by a demon. Lenny suspects that this is exactly why Anderson kidnapped Mary, and during that previous period, the reason Lenny's behavior seemed so strange was that he had been helping his wife, letting more demons take control of the town's residents. Humans who are about to be possessed by demons usually show obvious violent tendencies in the first few days. This is the stage when they are most likely to be discovered by the priest. For this reason, the couple would lock those possessed by demons in the trailer in the forest. They would let them return to their normal lives only after the initial period passed. However, Lenny wouldn't tell his good friend John about this kind of thing. Before long, the two hurry to Kyle's house and successfully rescue Mary from Father Anderson. But this action of Sheriff John completely enrages Anderson. He feels that the whole world is against him, and decides to use more radical methods to get rid of the demons. However, because of his recent crazy behaviors, the church leaders make a decision to fire Anderson. On the other side, Sidney finds Mary, who has just returned, and secretly tells her something. It is obvious that things are not over yet. At the same time, on the other side of the town, Kyle's sister Megan walks slowly to the mirror, staring fixedly at her own reflection in the mirror, as if she is examining a stranger. This is exactly the initial sign of being possessed by a demon. Just then, Megan's husband happens to come into the bathroom. Seeing his wife's strange appearance, he thinks something is wrong with her, but the next second, his wife grabs his head and smashes it against the mirror. Immediately after, Megan walks up to her husband, and looks at the blood on the ground with great curiosity. Then Megan pulls out the shard of glass that is stuck in her husband's neck. It doesn't take long for her husband to stop breathing. On the other side, Kyle is comforting Father Anderson, who has lost his job. While the two are talking, Kyle receives a call. His daughter has been living with his sister Megan all this time. After answering the call, all Kyle can hear is his daughter's screams. His heart skips a beat, and he hurries to his sister's house, only to find Megan's husband brutally murdered in the bathroom. Kyle immediately searches for his daughter's whereabouts, and finally finds his daughter and his sister's child hiding in the wardrobe. Through the children's accounts, Kyle roughly learns what happened. It is obvious that Megan is also possessed by a demon. First, he drives the two children to Sheriff John's house to leave them there temporarily, then begins to spare no effort in searching for Megan, but they have no idea that Megan has already gone to Kyle's house, and even encountered Sydney, who has been secretly monitoring Kyle. Hearing noises coming from Kyle's house, he immediately sneaks into the house quietly. In a dim storage room, he finds Megan, who is possessed by a demon, as a fellow demon host. Sydney knows exactly what Megan is going through now. He finds Mary and her husband, and tells them to take Megan to their secret base. They will release her only after she gets through the initial integration period. At the same time, Kyle returns home and finds traces that his sister Megan has been here. He is about to go out again to continue the search, but just then, Anderson receives a disturbing call. Sheriff John tells him that Charlie, the boy who reported Anderson earlier, suddenly broke into John's house and kidnapped Kyle's daughter. Later, Kyle finds a letter left by Sydney on his home TV. In the letter, Sydney instructs Kyle to go to a designated location alone. Kyle has to follow the instructions in the letter and go to the specified place. When he arrives, he finds that Sydney has already been waiting there. Sydney forces Kyle to put on a hood and hide in the trunk of the car, otherwise, he will never see his daughter again. Faced with Sydney's threat, Kyle has to agree. When he wakes up again, he is already in a strange room. His daughter, Amber, is right beside him. Sydney doesn't harm the two of them. He only locks the door, as if he intends to imprison the father and daughter here forever. And this building is exactly the demon's secret base. Megan, who had just been possessed, was also brought here by Mary and her husband. However, Sydney would never have thought that Anderson had been following him relentlessly. He even tracked him all the way to the secret base. After Sydney left the base, Anderson finally got out of his car and opened the trunk. He hesitated for a moment between his exorcism tools and the Holy Sword of Physics, and finally chose to take the Holy Sword of Physics into the demon's base. He kept calling Kyle's name along the way. Hearing that Anderson had come to rescue him, Kyle also kept pounding on the door desperately to respond. Following the sound, Anderson found the room where Kyle was imprisoned, and smashed open the door lock. Naturally, the noise couldn't escape the demon's attention. Lenny was the first to rush out and grappled with Anderson. Kyle immediately stepped forward to help. With his exorcism ability, Mary and her husband were no match for Kyle at all. They could only flee in panic. Just as Kyle was about to chase after them, a possessed person suddenly grabbed him. Anderson immediately stepped forward to help, trying to drive the demon out of that person's body. But at this moment, he heard Amber's scream for help. Kyle didn't have time to think about anything else. He hurried into the room to check on his daughter's situation, and unexpectedly saw his sister Megan. It's just that Megan was already possessed by a demon at this time, and was in the initial stage, extremely violent. When Megan saw Kyle, she attacked him and tackled him to the ground on the spot. Anderson tried to step forward to help, but Megan knocked him flying in an instant. Then, just like other demons, Megan began to absorb her brother Kyle's soul. Amber rushed out of the room in a hurry, reached out, and grabbed Megan's face. The next second, Megan seemed to suffer immense pain. Immediately after, a mass of black mucus sprayed out of Megan's mouth, and dissipated completely after a while. It was obvious that Amber also had the ability to exorcise demons. Kyle walked over to his sister to check on her condition and found that she was unharmed. After escaping from the demon's base, Anderson believed that all the incidents were caused by Sydney, so he went to Sydney's residence, blocked the exits with heavy objects, and then set the house on fire. In the fire, Anderson saw a vague figure inside the house. He thought that figure was Sydney, but the next day, Anderson saw Sydney appearing on the street. It was obvious that the one burned to death last night wasn't Sydney, the demon leader. Just at this moment, Anderson's lover comes to him anxiously, saying that her son Charlie has been out of contact since last night. She is now planning to go to the police station to file a report. Hearing this, Anderson finally realizes something is terribly wrong. The person he burned to death last night was his lover's son, Charlie. After the town has gone through so many incidents, Kyle decides to take his daughter and leave here for good. But when the father and daughter drive to a gas station, they find that everyone around them is staring at them. It is obvious that the demons have already taken control of the town, and they have no intention of letting the father and daughter leave easily. The movie ends here. Outcast was released in 2016. It is a live-action adaptation of a comic, but its narrative is very fragmented and the plot progresses extremely slowly. Besides that, the movie leaves numerous unresolved plot threads everywhere, giving people a sense of deliberate mystification. The actors' performances also need further refinement. In short, it is not worth watching the original film. Watching a plot summary is more than enough. If you like my channel, please like and subscribe to it.